Okay, down to our implementation of the hybrid architecture for which Aetherscale has taken up. We notice our first problem is Aetherscale is that every developer knows the root password to the shared account, so which is called def admin. When someone leaves the company, you have no way to revoke their access without changing the password for everyone. Now, our proposed system here is to create a centralized authentication method that is either using LTAP or FreeIPA to replace the local /etc part of view management system they had before. In order to do this, we have to begin at the level of configuring their host name. In order to set this environment appropriate for this scenario, we set our host name to IPA Aetherscale.local because we are setting up the FreeIPA centralized authentication system. Now, we go ahead to carry out some installations that will be required. We do the sudo dnf installation for the IPA server, which we're going to be making use of. We already installed that, that's why you see that this is complete. Then we move ahead to set up our system or our authentication system. Now, in order to do this, we run the sudo IPA server installation while setting up the various informations that will be needed. And while configuring the FreeIPA, we have to make sure we set the server hostname and so many others. On this account, it failed. Now, moving on to this, carry on. This is our server hostname, IPA Aetherscale.local. We set up the Aetherscale local, that is for the domain name, and so many other things, and as well configure the director manager's password, the admin password, which will be managing the entry and exit of users on the system. Now, other things are set up like the IP address and so many others. It's quite a long process, but we went through that. Now, after that, we have to enable the IPA service using the HTTP daemon for it to be active. Then using the firewall command, we're able to remove the firewall on some certain services in order to enable them to allow access to the system. And when we run IPA-CTL, the service, we realize that we have several other services that are running under them. So we have the directory service and others that shall aid us in this process. Now, so once we are done with the configuration of our CentOS, we move down to our Ubuntu virtual machine as its client. So here we see that it has already been done in order to save time, but previously we had to establish the host name of our Ubuntu. We set it as CI server 01 for Aetherscale. Yes, at the very beginning. Then we set into the host file, we set the IP address of the CentOS so that the client can be able to access its server. Now, we also installed FreeIPA client on Ubuntu for this to be able to work. Now, in order to install the client, we run the IPA client installation domain for Aetherscale, and Aetherscale.local, that's the domain. Then the server, ipa.aetherscale.local for our server. And when we're done, we can see below the IPA client install command was successful, meaning that we successfully installed the client onto this. Now, in order to see how this goes further, we have to create some users under our CentOS, create users and groups for which we shall add OS, such that once a user is onboarded into the system, the user is just assigned an account by FreeIPA, and once the user or the employee is leaving, the user's account can just be revoked, which does not affect the other members or developers that are present in Aetherscale.